world and national news. Let's head down to Washington, D.C., where Nancy Lyons joins us. Hey there, Nance.
Hey, Tim. President Biden took his COVID-19 message to a local middle school, promoting the vaccination of teens and their teachers and assuring them we know what it takes to keep kids safe from COVID, including widespread availability of testing. Bloomberg's Irv Chapman has more from Washington.
The president noted that 65% of teenagers in the District of Columbia have had at least their first dose. Then he added this comment.
I am so disappointed that particularly some of the Republican governors have been so cavalier with the health of these kids, so cavalier with the health of their communities. One of the lessons I hope our students can unlearn: politics doesn't have to be this way.
The president said he'd reward every student at the school who gets vaccinated with a visit to the White House. In Washington, Irv Chapman, Bloomberg Radio.
House Democrats continue to work on crafting a $3.5 trillion tax and spending bill. Today, the House Ways and Means Committee has been looking at adding $22 billion to the Trade Adjustment Assistance Program that retrains workers when free trade agreements displace their jobs. Republicans say doubling the annual outlay for that is unnecessary. Apple has been ordered by a court to allow developers to steer consumers to outside payment methods for mobile apps. The order could take a big bite out of the profitability of the App Store. According to analysts, the App Store takes in more than $20 billion a year with a profit margin above 75%. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Nancy Lyons.
The market.
The world's financial decision makers connect on the Bloomberg terminal, sharing ideas, negotiating trades, and forming an influential network that helps power global markets. Isn't it time you join them? Bloomberg.com/professional.
News you need.
Rates are low, earnings are pretty good.
Along with the insights you didn't know you needed.
When I'm walking my dog, when I'm taking Steve around the block. Steve is the name of your dog? Yeah, Steve.
Bloomberg Markets with Paul Sweeney and Matt Miller.
My dream scenario is that Paul sells his house, then the bubble bursts, and then I can find one.
Weekday mornings at 10 Eastern.
Never met Steve?
I have not met Steve.
Been on TV a lot.
On Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com.
Neil Armstrong waited 6 hours and 39 minutes to step onto the surface of the moon. Jackie Robinson waited 20 months to play his first game with the Brooklyn Dodgers. And even DiCaprio had to wait 22 years to win an Oscar. You can wait until your destination. Don't text and drive.
Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org. A message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Project Yellow Light, and the Ad Council.
When was the moment you discovered that you were meant for the business world?
Have you been getting a lot of inquiries from employers?
And then you started looking for the best sources of information.
Technology is challenging the regulators.
Doctors use kind of a virtual reality look.
I feel like the world is courting Elon Musk.
Which is how you got here.
How are other bankers restricted now?
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
145 over 92.
180 over 180.
Blood pressure numbers could change your life. Lowering your high blood pressure could save you from a heart attack or stroke. If you've stopped your treatment plan, restart it, or talk to your doctor about creating one that works better for you. Start taking the right steps at manageourbp.org.
Now I'm, trying to get better, struggling it out.
Brought to you by the American Heart Association, American Medical Association, and the Ad Council.
Introducing Bloomberg Quick Take. Our global stories take on tomorrow today. Watch live news on the events changing your business and your world. And go deeper with original shows on business, technology, politics, and culture. Don't settle for a news network built for yesterday. For a global view and an informed take, Bloomberg Quick Take. Now streaming free on Bloomberg.com/QuickTake. Brought to you by Accenture, American Express, and AT&T Business.
When was the last time you felt fully informed on world and economic affairs?
Is GDP catching up with the zeitgeist, or are we going to have to catch up with a boom economy?
That might have been it.
Is that a move that's accompanied by better bank stock performance?
Tom Keene, Jonathan Ferro, and Lisa Abramowitz.
It strikes me the degree of policy uncertainty for economists to factor in.
Bloomberg Surveillance, weekday mornings at 7 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com.
Okay, men, this is your time. Maybe you didn't choose this, but you're here now. You're gonna go out there and be an all-star caregiver. Cook, clean, be there emotionally and physically. You gotta dig deeper. Drive them to physical therapy, doctor's appointments, because that's what caregivers do. Don't give up. Show the world that you're tougher than tough. Caregiving is tougher than tough. Find the care guides you need at aarp.org/caregiving. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Tech talent is in high demand at Avanade, a joint venture between Microsoft and Accenture. That's why Avanade executive Brett Newton says the company is funding student scholarships at NJIT and earmarking them specifically for women in STEM fields.
What I really like about Avanade's scholarship program with NJIT is it's more than just a financial investment in the students. It's a relationship that we bring them into. We picked NJIT because it's a very different technical university. It's deeply rooted in solving business problems with technology, which is very much like Avanade. They're non-traditional in that they are much more focused and active in marrying technology to solving world problems and society problems. That's not normal with a lot of the engineering schools that we've had relationships with in the past. NJIT is very innovative and very entrepreneurial.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Where are today's real testing grounds for the latest innovation? Places where advancements in health, transportation, and business happen every day. Cities. Today, cities lead the way, taking local solves and turning them into global solutions. Now, introducing Bloomberg City Lab, a new platform covering the present and future of global cities. Learn more at Bloomberg.com/CityLab. Brought to you in partnership with Hyundai.
Wake up and text. Text and eat. Text and catch the bus. Text and miss your stop. Wait. Text and be late to work. Sorry, I'm late. Text and work. Text and pretend to work. Text and act surprised when someone calls you out for not working. Text and meet up with a friend you haven't seen in forever.
Hi.
Oh, hey. Text and complain that they're on their phone the whole time. Text and listen to them complain that you're on your phone the whole time. Text and whatever. But when you get behind the wheel, give your phone to a passenger. Put it in the glove box. Just don't text and drive. Visit StopTextsStopWrecks.org. A public service announcement brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. Down Friday, Wall Street on track for a losing week. It has been a volatile day. Let's get all the details as we head right over to the First Word breaking news desk for today's afternoon call. Here he is, Bill Maloney.
And good afternoon, Charlie. U.S. stocks in the red today after a positive start. Dow's currently down 125 points. S&P's dropped 14. NASDAQ is lower by 59. The U.S. 10-year yield at 1.34%. Gold is down 3. Transports rise 24. And among the main 11 S&P sectors, leaders were the materials and energy, utilities, and healthcare were under pressure. Leaders to the upside in the Dow, Nike and Intel, while Apple and Walgreens led to the downside. And after earnings, Kroger fell 7%. In other news, Apple's App Store was dealt a blow by a judge in the Epic Games antitrust case. And wrapping things up, Amazon is seen as the frontrunner for NFL's Sunday Ticket. Live from the First American News Desk, I'm Bill Maloney. Charlie.
Okay, we thank you very much, Bill. And your live breaking news over your Bloomberg Time Squawk, SQUAWK on your terminal. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Thank you so much for that update, Charlie Pellet. It's time now for our weekly crypto update. It's brought to you by IBKR, the professional's gateway to the world's markets. Their clients enjoy lowest cost access to stocks, options, futures, forex, and fixed income from a single integrated account. Learn more at ibkr.com. Well, one way that lawmakers propose to pay for the $1 trillion infrastructure bill that the Senate approved last month is by imposing tax reporting requirements for cryptocurrency brokers. It's the way that stockbrokers report their customer sales to the IRS. It could open the way for tighter regulation of cryptocurrency, and that's something that the Biden administration is moving toward as it also pushes for tax compliance. Let's get into it with Danelle Dixon, CEO and Executive Director at Stellar Development Foundation, a nonprofit organization that uses blockchain to unlock the world's economic potential by making money more fluid, markets more open, and people more empowered. Danelle joins us on the phone from California. Danelle, it's great to have you on the show. This was a very contentious part of the infrastructure bill, and I'm wondering what your thoughts are on it.
Yeah, it certainly became so. It was really fun for us to see the influence that we could have from the blockchain and crypto space, and for us just to really engage with policymakers. But in the end, I mean, the language is what the language is, so it didn't change. But it was really fun to be able to engage and to try to really create that educational opportunity around with these policymakers.
And so, Danelle, this bill, I know it was roundly criticized by the crypto industry for being too broad. Can you walk us through exactly what was the language that got crypto advocates so upset? I mean, what was the biggest point of contention there?
Yeah, so I think it was the definition of broker. So it was defined as any person who, for consideration, is responsible for regularly providing any service effectuating transfers of digital assets on behalf of another person. And so the argument and the concern was that there are many players in the space that run, for example, validators that just validate transactions on working on blockchains, but they don't actually have access to any information that traditional brokers would, and they don't act as brokers. So there was just concern that this was very, very broad language with technology that's very new and maybe not widely understood.
If you could write the regulation or write the legislation, what would you want it to say?
It's a great question. I think that the regulation itself should just have exclusions in it at the very least to talk about these, that think about blockchain more itself as infrastructure and think about these providers that are allowing and helping these transactions just to progress, that they actually are excluded from the bill. For example, like validators and folks who run nodes. There was language that was proposed that we were comfortable with, and that we actually, that it didn't ultimately make it through, but it would really just be excluding and making clear that it's not actually trying to go after these true infrastructure providers that are just helping blockchain to operate.
And so we've seen some efforts to try to change the language. Last month, there actually was an amendment that would change the reporting rules, but that was blocked by the Senate. So I'm curious, what's the path forward from here?
Well, I think that this actually created a really great opportunity for us because it showed that, first of all, there is large constituency that policymakers are willing to engage with and listen to. And I think that the path forward is to create those open dialogues before you get to the language of the bill. I think that it's crucial to engage with lawmakers to discuss the use cases and the roles for different participants. And that's bringing industry experts and policymakers together. And so that's what we're really focused on doing now.
Which policymakers can you single out for us that really seem to get it?
Well, I think that there are many. I can't single out any particular, we actually had some that supported language that we wanted to bring to the table. But most importantly, I think it's that when you actually understand how the technology operates and what we're trying to do here, I think that, you'll understand that the definition of broker doesn't and shouldn't cover some of these players that don't have access to that type of information and frankly have no relationship to any of the participants who are making these transactions. So I think it's really, it's all of the senators and the members of the House that we need to really engage with, but it's also the regulatory agencies that we're really focused on participating with and engaging with. I think some of them understand what the technology does, but they don't have a knowledge of what the use cases can do and what it can and the value that can bring to their constituents. So it's a lot of work for us to do in the U.S., but I think it's actually really good work. And I think that, once we demonstrate that excluding their own constituents from this really useful and valuable services that are offered through blockchain, they're going to want to be a part of it, and we're going to be able to help them to get there.
And so, Danelle, stepping back a little bit, it definitely feels over the past few months that regulators have started to circle crypto, whether it's the U.S. Congress with the infrastructure bill or just the SEC this week cracking down on Coinbase and really investigating their proposed lending product. I'm curious, what do you think is on the radar next? And we have just about 30 seconds here.
Well, I think that what a lot of focus right now is on the decentralized finance space. And so I think that we're going to see, we just have to provide a lot more education around that. I want us to be able to demonstrate the value of this technology neutral opportunity that we have that's made in the open and valuable to everyone. So I think we need to focus on a lot of different areas, but that's, I think, the next target space.
Danelle Dixon is CEO and Executive Director of Stellar Development Foundation. She joins us on the phone from California. Stellar Development Foundation is a nonprofit organization that uses blockchain to unlock the world's economic potential by making money more fluid, markets more open, and people more empowered. It's Bloomberg Business Week, and this is Bloomberg Radio coming up in just a few minutes. It's the song of the day, the chart of the day, and the stock of the day. Don't miss it. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
This is a blue.
The world's financial decision makers are connected on the Bloomberg terminal, the buy side and the sell side, together, collaborating across markets and countries in real time, sharing ideas, negotiating trades, and forming an influential network of over 325,000 financial professionals that helps power global markets. Isn't it time you join them? Request a demo at bloomberg.com/professional.
Bloomberg Money Minute. Harvard University will stop investing in fossil fuels and will instead use its giant $42 billion endowment to support the green economy. The shift comes after years of student activism. GM is expecting full or partial reimbursement from battery supplier LG for the cost of recalling its Chevy Bolt EVs to fix a battery defect. The automaker also sees the chip shortage easing next year after it cut North American production by about 200,000 vehicles this year. NFL Sunday Ticket may be headed to Amazon Video. CNBC reports Amazon is seen as the front-runner for the package of out-of-market games, which has been owned by DirecTV for the past 27 years. Amazon already has the rights to Thursday Night Football. Wall Street wrapping up a down week with a lower session. The Dow is down 145, the S&P down 16, the Nasdaq down 59. Larry Kofsky, Bloomberg Radio.
If you love them enough to listen to them practice the same song on tuba, over and over and over and over and over, then surely you'll check NHTSA.gov/the right seat to make sure they're correctly buckled in the back seat.
Sounds good, honey.
Check today at NHTSA.gov/the right seat. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
We used to take our freedom of movement for granted. Not anymore.
It's not just that people work for the airline.
And it's natural to feel grateful for the things that kept you going.
Does America have a chance to lose our advantage?
Can we get to herd immunity fast enough so that we'll be in good shape?
But really, we were just doing our jobs.
Oxford University is starting a study on patients who've recovered from COVID.
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. Economics.
Chairman Powell looks brilliant. Finance.
Some breaking news for you. A share sale.
Investment.
The narrative of the reopening trade has changed.
The Bloomberg Surveillance Podcast.
Do you want some volatility, Tom?
Please.
Do you want me to go there?
Tom Keene, Jonathan Farrell, Lisa Abramowitz, and the names that shape the world's markets.
Joseph Stiglitz of Columbia University, the laureate.
Bloomberg Surveillance. Listen today at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, or subscribe on Apple Podcasts.
So I could play sports and see my friends without having to worry about anything.
I'm ready for concerts to be back and just have a life again. So I can actually eat pizza at my favorite pizza place.
Because I'm ready to travel again.
So that I can sit on the couch, read my granddaughter books, and hug her when there's a happy ending.
We each have our own reason for why we're getting vaccinated against COVID-19. What will yours be? Visit GetVaccineAnswers.org for information on the COVID-19 vaccines. It's up to you. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
Burden LLP Accountants and Advisors presents Tax Chat with Richard Goldstein, Senior Principal and Co-Leader of Burden State and Local Tax Practice.
The COVID-19 pandemic and the resulting state and local government restrictions have caused businesses to close their doors and many employees to work in locations that were not included in their company's original business footprints. The new normal of remote working has created a variety of state and local tax challenges, from tax nexus and multi-state income tax apportionment to income tax withholding and tax resident status. Businesses and individuals need to stay ahead of these issues to help reduce the impact they may have on their overall tax liability. If you are a high net worth individual or a business owner, let Burden help protect you, your family, and your business.
For more tax chat from Burden Accountants and Advisors, visit burdenllp.com. That's BERDONLLP.com. Burden Accountants and Advisors. We listen, we solve, we do.
Jody Schwartz, noted tax attorney, tells us why she recommends Jewish Communal Fund.
I've recommended JCF to my clients, to my colleagues, to really anyone who asks a question about charitable giving because it's convenient, it allows you the maximum tax deductions permitted by law, and it just makes your life easier, organized, and simple. Another aspect for clients and for other colleagues who don't want their identities to be known or don't want to talk about the property that they're giving away to charity, I found JCF's confidentiality, its aggregate reporting to be very attractive to people.
JCF can help you and your clients organize your charitable giving with a donor-advised fund. A fund can be established with a tax-deductible contribution of $5,000 or more. Contributions to JCF qualify for the highest tax deduction allowed by law. Visit jcfny.org or call 212-752-8277.
To protect his home and family from disaster, Steve used courage, wisdom, and his camera phone.
That should do it.
Way to go, Steve! By simply taking digital pictures of his family's important documents, Steve can always have them stored safely online, no matter when disaster strikes. Learn other simple ways to protect your home and family before a natural disaster at ready.gov. That's ready.gov. A message from FEMA and the Ad Council.
As the world grows smaller,
I want to focus first on U.S.-China relations.
our reporting goes deeper.
You're looking at huge impact in Philippines.
Bloomberg Daybreak Asia, Sunday night at 6 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
It's Bloomberg Business Week. Tim Stenivek and Katie Greifeld live in the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Katie, it's a historic day. Do you know why?
I do. I don't know if you want to tell our audience.
Well, it's a day that Dave Wilson has actually allowed me to choose the song of the day.
That's huge for
It's
you.
huge.
Yeah.
I saw him really early this morning. He said, check out the chart, choose a song, send it to our producer, Paul Brennan, and we'll take it from there. So there's a lot of pressure on me, but I think he felt so bad that I just couldn't get the song right. So he's like, okay, I'll let you choose it, see if you can. I got to get it right today. That's the thing. We're going to study a little bit more. In the meantime, let's get a check of the trading day with Charlie Pellet.
All right, we have got the Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ all on the minus side. 28 minutes to go ahead of the closing bell as we await that crucial song of the day. Right now, we've got the S&P down 21, drop now of 0.5%. Dow Industrials down 160, lower by 0.5. NASDAQ down 90, a drop there of 0.6%. 10-years down 13.30. 10-year yield right now 1.34%. Volatile is the word of the day, perhaps, when it describes today's trading. Is there a song volatile in the title? Investors assessing the latest read on the economy after more strategists weighed in with cautious comments about the market. 10-years down 13.30. Again, 10-year yield 1.34%. Spot gold down 0.3%. 1%, $17.88 the ounce, while West Texas Intermediate crude oil up 2.4%, $69.74 a barrel. President Biden yesterday laid out a sweeping plan to combat the pandemic, including a requirement for all large companies to mandate shots or testing. As for large public gatherings, sporting events, for example, are we putting ourselves at increased risk? Dr. Andrew Pekosh is a professor of molecular microbiology and immunology at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. And on Bloomberg TV and radio this morning, he told us young people cannot get complacent.
Our data, particularly with the Delta variant, is suggesting that severe disease is skewing to younger populations. And those individuals between the ages of 20 and 49 or so that were initially spared a high rate of severe disease in the initial waves of the pandemic are now coming down with severe disease at a much higher rate. And let's not forget long COVID, which can affect people even with mild disease. And people can suffer symptoms from that for weeks and months after infection.
Dr. Pekosh with the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health, which is supported by Michael R. Bloomberg, founder of Bloomberg LP and Bloomberg Philanthropies. Among some of the vaccine names that we track, Pfizer down 0.8%. Its German partner BioNTech down 0.5%. AstraZeneca up 0.2%. The ADRs there. Moderna lower by 1.2%. Johnson & Johnson down 0.4%. We're brought to you by Land Rover, introducing the Land Rover Defender, Motor Trend's 2021 SUV of the year. Put the Defender's capabilities to the test at your local Land Rover retailer. Land Rover, above and beyond. Again, recapping equities lower here. S&P down 21, a drop now of 0.5%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Thank you so much, Charlie Pellet. This is Bloomberg.
I give you the keys to the kingdom and you pick the same song that I would have.
Are you serious?
Quite.
Guys, I'm getting goosebumps.
As you should be for Bruce Springsteen's The Rising, the title track of his post-9/11 album. By the way, I was actually on a Zoom discussion of that record last night, run by the folks at Monmouth University, my undergraduate alma mater down in New Jersey.
Also where you worked on records associated with Springsteen, right?
I never worked on records per se, unless you want to talk about archival records.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
You know, because it's now the Bruce Springsteen Archives and Center for American Music that's down there, and before that it was the Bruce Springsteen Special Collection, which was started by fans. I was involved with that.
It's a special song to me too because it's what introduced me to Bruce Springsteen. I think I was 18 or 19 years old then, and the Bruce Springsteen and E Street Band hadn't had a new album out for years. And then they went on tour.
Actually, if you take it from a band perspective, it was the first album that they did together since Born in the USA back in 1984.
So my dad went to the Born in the USA tour. He went to a show there. I took him for his 50th birthday to a show in San Francisco on the Rising tour.
And there you go. I mean, and since The Rising was inspired by the events of 9/11, that's why you picked it. That's why I would have picked it, and it's all about the chart. So let's take a look at it, at least, you know, on YouTube. You've got the S&P 500 for the past 20 years. And it's had a decent run. You know, works out to a 7.3% compounded annual rate of gain. You know, it's more than tripled over that time. But I decided to go back and look at the previous 20 years leading up to 9/11. And what we've seen more recently doesn't hold a candle to what we saw back then. I mean, you had an annual growth rate of close to 12%. And, you know, if not for the last year and a half, which, you know, you had the bursting of the dot-com bubble, I mean, the comparison would have been even more skewed toward the earlier period. It just goes to show you, I mean, things do come and go over time. And how often do you get to see a 20-year chart anyway? I suppose that's as much a reason as anything to make that comparison. And if you want to see it for yourselves, folks, send me an email. I'll get it to you with the explanation that goes with it and everything I do going forward. The email address is dwilson@bloomberg.net. That's D. Wilson at Bloomberg.net.
It kind of flies, Dave, in the face of conventional wisdom, or at least conventional discussion about how well the S&P 500 has done in recent years.
Well, and you think about like the 54 records for the index this year, you think, oh, things are going great. And actually, they have been for the past year and a half. But, you know, compare that to what you saw over really the 5 to 6 year stretch, which sort of encompasses the dot-com era, if you will, Internet 1.0. It's a whole different ballgame.
Not a bad 40 years to be investing in U.S. equities.
No, not bad. Certainly would have been better earlier.
Dave, we got about a minute left. Give us your chart of the day.
Okay.
Your stock of the day.
All right, then. Now we're talking A-Mark Precious Metals. The ticker on this one is AMRK. I mean, they deal in gold, silver, and platinum. They also distribute coins for government mints. And they were out with fiscal fourth quarter results late yesterday. That went over pretty well. Earnings and revenue beating analysts' average estimates in Bloomberg survey. There isn't much in the way of analyst coverage, just two analysts, Roth Capital Partners and D.A. Davidson. Nonetheless, beating their projections. And, the shares, well, they set a record earlier today. And at the moment, they're up 14.5%.
And 132% so far this year. Check out Dave's stock of the day. It's just after 4:15 p.m. Wall Street time on Facebook, LinkedIn, and on Twitter at @1Dave. Dave, I don't know if you gave the shout out to your how to get on your list for the chart.
I did, actually. I snuck it in there, Tim.
Okay, good. I wanted to make sure you did it. D. Wilson at Bloomberg.net. Dave Wilson, stocks editor for Bloomberg News. Dave, have a great weekend. Let's get a check of the latest world and national news. Nancy Lyons is in D.C. Hey there, Nancy.
I wove it in there, so you did.
Hold on. Well, it looks like we are trying to get Nancy Lyons with a check of world and national news. In the meantime, let's get a check of the markets and see how things are looking. Just about 20 minutes. Wow, Katie, time flies when you're having fun, right?
When you're hosting radio with a friend, it sure does.
Oh, that's so nice. She has to say that because we spent 4 hours a day together. We are seeing stocks lower across the board. In fact, the S&P 500 is taking a leg lower as we do get closer and closer to the close, down more than 0.6% as we speak. The Dow down more than 0.6%. The Nasdaq, though, down 0.7%. Interestingly enough, Katie, you and I were talking about this a little earlier. The average volume today on the Dow Jones Industrial Average is higher by 34%.
It is pretty nuts, especially when you look at what the S&P 500 is doing. Volume is actually a touch lower there, but Tim, you and I were talking. This is probably directly related to the volume that Apple is seeing. Big name in the S&P 500, but the Dow, as we know, only 30 names. So the fact that Apple is just seeing such crazy volume definitely affects the broader index there, the Dow Jones.
Yeah, that's right. It looks like also that Apple has volume right now of 19.9 million, which is just massive compared to what you see with the other stocks in the Dow Jones right now. Yeah, I mean, Microsoft is at 3.5 million. This is Bloomberg Business Week, and this is Bloomberg Radio.
What? The world's financial decision makers connect on the Bloomberg terminal, sharing ideas, negotiating trades, and forming an influential network that helps power global markets. Isn't it time to join them at Bloomberg.com/professional?
Do hedge funds and other alternative managers rely on Pershing for a highly personalized experience? Mark Alderati, a managing director at BNY Mellon's Pershing and head of Prime Services, shares how we help you consider everything.
In today's ever-evolving environment, the team at Pershing's Prime Services wants to know, what are you focused on now? Are you confident in the stability of your counterparty? Do you feel they can help you grow your business? When it comes to fundraising, do you have access to the mindset of the advisor or have what you need to navigate the ODD process? Exceptional service for our clients is at the core of what we do. Our award-winning team is just one of the benefits of working with BNY Mellon. Whether it's customized financing or securities lending solutions, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and dedicated to meeting your demands, so you can focus on growing your business and producing results for your clients.
To learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers, visit Pershing.com. Pershing LLC, member FINRA, NYSE, SIPC.
I was in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean when it happened. There was a sudden jolt and our submarine crashed on the seafloor. We were in total darkness.
That's Dr. Dejana Figueroa, a marine biologist and STEM teacher, talking about a deep sea dive she'll never forget.
It's funny, when I was a kid, I was afraid of the ocean, and there I was, 2 miles below the surface. But as a scientist, you prepare for that. Using our training and a little creativity, we fixed the sub and finished our experiments. The dive was just too important. Every dive gives us glimpses at things few people ever get to see. Glowing creatures, fiery undersea volcanoes. When we got back to the surface, I kissed the ground and called my mom, of course. But you know what? I wouldn't trade that dive for anything.
Dr. Figueroa uses her passion for STEM to discover new things and make the world a better place. She can STEM, so can you. Check out She Can STEM for more stories and inspiration. A message from the Ad Council.
Are you interested in a challenging and exciting career? One where you can be part of solving complex challenges across industries and geographies? Bloomberg's ever-expanding technology, data, news, and media services foster innovation, empower clients, and offer nearly limitless opportunities for career growth. Visit Bloomberg.com/careers today to view our current job opportunities. Bloomberg LP is an equal opportunity employer. The address once again is Bloomberg.com/careers.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their businesses strategically, yet the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating system, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
Determination and operational strength are both essential factors for growth in asset management. I'm Steve Meyer, President, Head of SEI's Investment Manager Services Division. We know that disruptive forces create opportunities around the world. If you see potential in change, our industry specialists will maximize SEI's integrated platform of data and risk management, global investment operations, compliance support, and investor services to position your asset management business for success. Come grow with us.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
Hey guys, it's me, Isabella Gomez, filling in for Smokey Bear because he's got more to say than just...
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Like, if you're outside enjoying a barbecue, don't let a hamburger distract you from fire safety. Make sure you aren't dumping your hot coals or ashes onto the ground because that could start a wildfire. So take wildfire prevention seriously and let's save the world one day at a time. Juntos con Smokey Bear, podemos hacerlo. Go to smokeybear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention.
Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
NJIT makes innovation happen. It also makes entrepreneurs like Anya O'Dwyer, founder of Innovate, a tech-driven civil engineering and construction management firm. Anya says NJIT is defining the future.
NJIT is extremely important as a hub of disciplines all in one space with all of these brilliant minds. NJIT's role is huge when it comes to defining the future and how from an interdisciplinary point of view. They have it all there, whether it's the innovation hub, the maker space. NJIT is already creating that collaboration between the disciplines and you have civil engineers speaking to programmers, speaking to electrical engineers, and together they're creating advancements that we wouldn't have been able to do without those three minds coming together and solving a problem as one rather than solving it in isolation.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Burden LLP Accountants and Advisors presents Tax Chat with Lisa Goldman, partner and leader of Burden's International Tax and Advisory Practice.
If you're a high net worth individual with international investments or a business owner with operations overseas, it is essential to have a tax advisor who knows how to protect your assets on a global scale. Owning and investing in foreign corporations comes with certain tax responsibilities. Burden Accountants and Advisors works with clients to ensure that they understand the intricacies of the global market, maximize the tax opportunities available, and reduce the challenges presented by international tax laws.
If you're a high net worth individual or a business owner, let Burden help protect you, your family, and your business. For more tax chat from Burden Accountants and Advisors, visit burdenllp.com. That's BERDONLLP.com. Burden Accountants and Advisors. We listen, we solve, we do.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. 13 minutes to go ahead of the closing bell, and we are on track for a losing session for the week. Looks like a loss of just about 1.6%, biggest weekly decline since mid-June. A volatile session today as investors assess the latest read on the economy after more strategists weigh in with cautious comments about the market. S&P 500 index now lower by 29 points. Again, lows of the day down 0.7%. The Dow down 224, down 0.6. Nasdaq is slumping 115, now down by 0.8%. Nasdaq 100 index down 0.7. Russell 2000 also down 0.7. Dow Transport's now lower by 0.3%. 10 years down 13.30 seconds. 10-year yield 1.34%. Gold down 0.3%. Spot gold is at $17.88 the ounce, and West Texas Intermediate crude up 2.2%, $69.63 for a barrel of WTI. Apple ordered to make a major change to the way it generates money from its App Store. Right now, Apple also weighing on markets, down by 3.3%. Recapping S&P down 0.7. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Thank you, Charlie Pellet. Bloomberg Business Week is brought to you by Land Rover. Introducing the Land Rover Defender, Motor Trend's 2021 SUV of the Year. Put the Defender's capabilities to the test at your local Land Rover retailer. Land Rover, above and beyond.
How about you let me drive?
Oh, no. Honey, please, out of the drive. Drive home.
Excuse me, I don't want to drive.
Just drive, baby.
Question and drive.
This is the Drive to the Close
That funky music will drive us till the dawn.
on Bloomberg Radio.
Yes, indeed, it is time for the drive to the close. We are just about 10 minutes away from market close on this shortened trading week. It's Friday, September 10th, 2021. We are seeing red across the board right now. Stocks taking a leg lower as we do get to the end of the session. Let's get into it, though, with Ryan Dietrich, Chief Market Strategist at LPL Financial. He joins us on the phone from Charlotte, North Carolina. Ryan, great to have you back on the show. Really glad to have you on a day like today where we are expecting to see a fifth day of consecutive declines on the S&P 500. And I'm wondering from a technical analysis perspective, what signal that's sending you?
Yeah, Tim, thanks for having me back. But you're right, guys. We're looking at a 5-day losing streak. I was just looking into it. Is it something to really be worried about? Now, here's what you need to know. The last 5 days, the S&P is down about 1.4%. All right, that's the smallest 5-day losing streak since one way back in October of 2016. And you think about it like this, last year, 2020, we saw 35 single days with a worse return than we've seen the previous 5 days. So put a bow on this. Yes, down 5 days in a row is going to be the headlines. But to us, it looks like a normal consolidation. It is September, the worst month of the year. You know, there's some different factors there. But after more than 104% rally off those lows since March 2020, maybe just some seasonal weaknesses happening. And again, it's relatively contained. We're not overly concerned right now.
So the sky is not falling. Keep things in perspective. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, we've been trying to say that for a while, I think. I think there's always scary things to look at. I mean, and trust me, the worries are out there. You got the Delta concerns, the recent, obvious economic data is not doing that great. What's going on with Washington? What's going on with the Fed? We understand a lot of the concerns, but the bottom line is just look at those earnings season. We just had record earnings season. Earnings are up 26% above the peak back in 2019. So, yes, stocks are close to all-time highs. Earnings are also at all-time highs and growing still really, really nicely. So there's worries. Don't get us wrong. But, this bull market looks alive and well. But with you feel like a broken record saying this market's going higher because the economy's still strong. We still feel that way. And we still think there's, time to go to this bull market.
So, Ryan, we're coming off of a record earnings season. We also saw record PPI this morning. I mean, if you look at the producer price index for the prior month, it was way above forecast at a series high. How are you thinking about inflation here? How does that factor in to what you're saying, this still strong economy?
Yeah, Katie, I mean, that's a great question because clearly that's the headline. If you look at the core PPI, it was a little bit lower, but still, things are more expensive. I mean, it's $5 to get a gallon of milk, at least $3 to put, per gallon fill up your car. So people are feeling that. There's no doubt about it. But when we look at what's the market saying, is the market truly worried about inflation? And when we see things like the 10-year yield well off the 171 level from, back in late March, we see copper well off the highs, lumber off the highs, break evens are well off their recent highs from a few months ago. Inflation's there, but it doesn't appear like the market is extremely worried. It's hard for us to see gold just flatline at $800 an ounce and not be soaring if the market was worried about inflation.
Ryan, I just want to cut you off there because you gave us a lot of data, and I just want to know the single signal that those things you just mentioned send. What are they?
Yeah, the market is not as worried about inflation as I think the media, as a lot of people are. The likelihood that inflation turns to a 1970 style spiral. The stock market, the market in general, market participants are not voting on that when you see a 10-year yield still around 130. It's hard for us to believe that.
And so, Ryan, I'm glad that you brought up break-evens, and they've definitely cooled a little bit from their decade-plus highs. If we look at 10-year break-evens, the long-term inflation outlook, though, looks kind of sticky. I mean, it's not at the very peak anymore, but it's really just bounced back and forth in this range. I wish I could show our listeners a chart because it is amazing. I mean, what does that say to you? That, okay, maybe we're not seeing an inflationary spiral, but it seems to suggest that inflation is going to stick around at an elevated level for at least a while.
Excellent point. We had barely 2% inflation for like a whole decade, right? Then COVID happened, the economy came back, all the supply chain issues. It's likely that we'll see, maybe 3.5% inflation for a year or two. I mean, that's not historically abnormal as inflation, just when we lived in a 2% inflation world for so long. It's clearly higher, but again, it's not that 7, 8, 9, 10% inflation that we saw in the late 70s and early 80s. So I think it's a very key concept. You mentioned break-evens. A little interesting. Let's go around the globe here. Break-evens over in Germany and Europe are actually breaking out to some of the highest levels. UK, I think, a 13-year high. Germany's multi-year highs as well. So there are some more inflationary expectations starting to show up across the seas over in Europe. Now, what exactly does all that mean? Well, that would be a more difficult conversation, but we're seeing more inflationary worries overseas. We're just not quite seeing them here in the U.S.
So you said that we'll see 3 to 3.5% inflation for a year or two. Is that transitory to you, a year or two?
Really not a good question. We all thought transitory at the beginning meant like 3 or 6 months, but I think we all thought transitory means to stick around a little bit more. But when you had the worst, recession of our lifetime, the way the economy opened up, supply chain issues, it still feels to us like a little bit higher inflation is okay, but again, it's just not that runaway. And maybe that is the new, I hate to say this is the new normal, but maybe 3 to 3.5% inflation for a couple of years is a little more normal. And again, that's kind of a long-term average of inflation if you think about it. I mean, you look at unemployment and inflation, the misery index, right? That's right around 10%. That's actually the long-term average of where inflation and unemployment have been historically going back 50 years. So it's a lot of ways to look at it, but again, inflation just to us is not quite the concern. And if it was, we don't think the stock market would be doing this good, and we don't think, those commodities and industrial metals would probably be a lot higher if the market were truly worried about inflation.
Okay, so inflation, maybe it's not a concern. How do you position your portfolio around that? I mean, are you going into more duration-sensitive sectors, or what looks attractive to you right now?
Yeah, well, on the fixed income side of things, we have shortened up duration. We think there is likely coming higher rates. We've got the 10-year yield. We think will be up around 175 by the end of this year. Of course, that'll impact bonds, which trade inversely with higher rates. So we like mortgage-backed securities, which are not quite as impacted by higher rates. Now that's the fixed income side of things. But on the other side of things, we do like the cyclicals, the financials, industrials, materials, the early cycle play, along with small caps historically early economic cycle growth do better. Fully aware they started the year off gangbusters in the last 3 or 4 months have struggled. But we really do think we can see another fourth quarter rally like we did last year in some of those areas. Do not forget last year, guys, the Russell 2000 small caps in 25%, all-time record fourth quarter last year. To me, small caps have just been consolidating most of this year. And we think that leadership in the cyclical value area likely will take the baton before all is said and done in 2021.
Ryan Dietrich, Chief Market Strategist at LPL Financial. We're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much for taking the time. We really appreciate you joining us on the phone from Charlotte, North Carolina. Stocks taking a leg lower. The S&P 500 down now by close to 0.8%. The NASDAQ by 0.9%. The Dow down by close to 0.8%. Well, coming up next, it's Bloomberg Beyond the Bell. It is our cross-platform coverage of the market close. We're going to be joined by our colleagues from Bloomberg Television. It's on Bloomberg TV, Bloomberg Radio, and on YouTube. Just 2 minutes away from the market close. This is Bloomberg.
Beyond the Bell. Bloomberg's comprehensive cross-platform coverage of the U.S. market close starts right now.
And right now we are 2 minutes away from the end of the trading day, the trading week. Romaine Bostic, Caroline Hodge, Shanali Bassick in for Taylor Riggs, counting you down to the closing bell. And here to help take us beyond the bell, it's our global simulcast, Tim Stenovic and Katie Greifeld in for Carol Massar, bringing together our Bloomberg Television, Radio, and YouTube audiences. Tim, peak cyclical optimism. Are we past it?
That's the question. I mean, for much of the day, stocks were kind of struggling to find direction, oscillating between positive and negative territory, until really just the last hour, when stocks took a leg lower and continued to move lower, with the Dow down by more than 0.7%.
Yeah, and it's interesting, still searching for a reason. We were just talking about potential whys with Ryan Dietrich. He is the Chief Market Strategist at LPL Financial. And look, September, it's a historically bad month for stocks. We're coming off of 20% year-to-date gains. Maybe it makes sense to take a little bit of profit heading into the weekend. But I will point out this is the 5th day of losses for the S&P 500. Shanali, that's the longest streak since about February.
Certainly, and maybe you have Gina Martin Adams moving the market out with a note today on producer prices too high for the S&P. That is dealing with a slowdown. It's raising a red flag for those S&P companies that are dealing with that margin pressure. Let's see how long that sticks.
Friends, I call it Apple. Down almost 10 points a drag on the S&P 500. Not many of the benchmarks could sustain the biggest company from a listed perspective in the US taking such a nosedive on the day. And that's all to do with Epic Games. It's interesting that some of the other gaming companies are rallying on that news.
Yeah, absolutely. Here, and we should point out, at 2 o'clock, when me, Caroline, and Shanali came onto the television air, we had Ross Mayfield over at Baird, and we were sort of joking about the fact that the correction in this market from that all-time high on September 2nd was only about a 1%. Well, in the last 2 hours, that's extended to about 1.7% here. So that fabled 3% correction, that may actually be in the cards here. A 10% correction, which I thought was the definition of a correction. That's still a little bit of a ways off here. All right, let's get you caught up here on the numbers. 34,607 on the Dow Jones Industrial Average. That's going to be down 272 points, or 0.8%. The S&P down 35 points, or 0.8%. The NASDAQ Composite down 133 points, or 0.8%. And stop me if this sounds familiar. The Russell 2000, your underperformer here on the day, actually down 1% here on the day.
I want to go back to what Caroline said about Apple, because you're actually seeing a really interesting story play out when it comes to volumes. Change in volume over the last 30 days on the Dow higher by close to 40%. That's thanks to Apple. And Apple's
on the Dow?
On the Dow.
The Dow.
It's absolutely
down.
Well, just for volume, it just shows the power and how many people are, and how much shares of Apple are trading. It's wild.
That perspective.
Volume is higher too when it comes to the NASDAQ, but with the S&P 500, it's relatively
biggest weight in the S&P 500 down 3.2% on the day.
Yeah.
And let's look at how that all feeds in from a sector perspective, because we drill down and look what's your worst performing on the S&P 500 in terms of your underperforming sectors, off by almost 3%, is tech hardware equipment. Of course, that's Apple, but it's also some of the companies related to Apple, Seagate and the like. They're all being dragged lower. Interestingly, autos getting sold off hard as well, off by more than 1.6%. You got Tesla to thank for that, largely because Kathy Wood has been trimming some of her profits there, and we see that Tesla is headed lower. But banks not looking pretty, even though yields are pushing higher today. Banks on the downside, real estate on the downside too, food staples. That's all thanks to Kroger, of course. I'm not going to steal all the thunder of the individual movers, but clearly that was a key mover on the day. On the upper side, in the green, well, basically it's just chip stocks that are outperforming on the day. Semis, your key winner, up more than a percentage point. Katie.
Well, sticking with what's in the green, I want to highlight a firm. This is a buy now, pay later company. Reported earnings yesterday, and it blew past forecasts. Its fourth quarter revenue was above the highest estimates, and the future looks bright as well, at least according to a firm's outlook. That's why the stock soared over 34% today.
Have you used that, a firm or any of those buy now, pay later thing? Yeah, I haven't. I don't know anyone who does that.
I have.
Why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know.
Financial products when you're reporting on finance.
I'm surprised you haven't. Kate, don't you own a horse, Katie? Did you buy that all at once?
I paid up front. Actually. Yeah,
Bad
it was
Katie.
painful. Maybe I should have checked out.
Everyone knows you put your horse on it.
Palatins, then a horse.
Would have been paying that off for a long time. Fine, moving on. I want to highlight Zynga. This is an online gaming company. It also had a great day, and that is a direct consequence of that Apple ruling. Companies like Zynga now theoretically can link to external websites for payment for their apps, meaning that Apple theoretically shouldn't take a cut. That's why Zynga closed.
I'm sorry to interrupt you one more time, because Zynga, I mean, this just brought
Katie's playing farm.
He's not sorry.
It reminded me here, Katie, because Zynga, it's a lot of these online quizzes. We have a quiz on the Bloomberg terminal that a couple of weeks ago you were just crowing about having won. I didn't notice your name in the rankings.
Crowing. Yeah, I'm embarrassed to admit I went anonymous this week.
Oh, okay. Oh, anonymous. Oh.
Anonymous.
Is there a reason why you went anonymous?
I think actually my score wasn't so bad. I think it was about 170. Maybe I remember it exactly because it was that painful.
All right, what's UPS doing?
UPS. Well, this company announced today that it's acquiring Roadie. That is a same-day delivery startup. The amount was... Say that again? Oh, sorry. The amount was undisclosed. UPS already had a pilot program in place with Roadie, though, to test same-day delivery. Looks like they're making it official, and investors seem to like it because UPS finished about 2% higher. So.
All right, well, you got the gainers, I got the decliners. Apple, again, the big story of the day. That news crossing just before noon. Wall Street time shares finishing down by 3.3%. Again, a court ordering that Apple can no longer force developers to use in-app purchases. It's why we're seeing companies like Zynga move higher and other gaming companies. Apple did relax its rules about a week ago. Mark Gurman pointed that out to us in an interview on Bloomberg Radio earlier, but we did still see other stocks move higher as a result of Spotify as well. Alphabet also taking a hit because of that, because Epic and Epic and the parent company of Google, Alphabet, are also locked in head-to-head, and if bad news for Apple also could mean bad news for Alphabet as a result of the Google Play Store. Shares of Kroger also lower on the day today, fell as much as 9.1%, but finishing the day down by 7.5% after second quarter's gross margins disappointed Wall Street.
Have you seen that Kroger already has like Christmas decorations out?
It's not too early. I mean, I think from no, it's after late. Well, look, it's not too early to be doing Christmas shopping.
Thanks,
Romaine.
You would make a great retail executive.
With the supply crunch, you know.
Why not?
Yeah, we got to do our Christmas stuff early.
Well, how do you like that the hottest tech stock of the day is UPS?
I like it. They would call themselves, increasingly invested in technology.
Everything's a tech company. It's no longer a horizontal. Well, it's now horizontal, not a vertical. Let's have a look at what's going vertically red across my screen as I'm looking at global macro movers. FX, everything is down versus the US dollar. We're seeing the US dollar outperform. In fact, it was lower on the day at the beginning. And the moon music before the US came into play ball was actually, we were kind of optimistic on a Biden-Xi Jinping call. But now the moon music turned. We got more negative. We're worried about Apple. We're worried about just generally everything. Sentiment change. Dollar finds itself as a haven bid. The yen off by 0.1%, the euro off by 0.1%, as well as some of the European FX companies, FX pairs. Let's have a quick look at what's happening in commodities, though, because completely different story. In fact, we see oil managed to charge higher, up by more than 2%. That is yesterday we saw perhaps it get knocked around by the fact that China was unleashing some of its oil reserves, but we nevertheless still see the effects of Hurricane Ida impacting infrastructure, impacting your production, impacting WTI crude that is up 2% at $69.58. Metals continuing to surge, aluminium among them, copper among them. That's why we saw Freeport McMoran do so well on the day in terms of stocks. Zinc is up 0.8%, and iron ore up 2% on the red. Every sovereign bond, we see Canadian, Portuguese, Austrian, Finnish, yields just pushing higher on the day, Romain.
Yeah, well, let's talk about yields here because, I mean, look, we actually did have some movement here in the bond market this week here. The 10-year yield is slightly higher. We ended last week right around 132 here. We're going to end it here right around 134 here. So a little bit of movement here. We had a lot of oscillation here in the real yields this week. At one point, we actually saw a negative 99 print here. So basically a less negative number in the direction that a lot of people think real yield should have been going. But now they're actually going to finish the week back down below that negative 1% level here. As far as your 30-year yield out on the longer end of the curve, you had about a 3.5 basis point move here on a weekly basis. But overall here, you can see we're still mired in a range that we've been in now, really for the last 3 or 4 months.
Well, the big question I think that investors still have, and that we continue to talk about each and every day, it seems like, is what happens when it comes to producer prices. Look for what happened this week, guys. When we think about Sherwin-Williams, we think about PPG Industries, the paint company, those companies saying, hey, wait a second, producer prices are getting so high for us, input costs are getting so high for us, that we're actually going to have to decrease what we think we're going to be making.
Well, Kroger had that issue as well, right? That was some of its issues as margins being hit by supply chain issues.
It is the story. We didn't know how long it would last. What is transitory? But it's looking like transitory is going to last well into the near future.
Yeah.
Well, we should get an update on transitory because we do have CPI on Tuesday. PPI obviously very hot today, and this is going to be one of the last top-tier data points that the Fed will have to look at before its late September meeting. So we'll see, transitory or not, inflation has definitely stuck around much longer than most economists and maybe journalists thought.
And to bring these points together, if you're spending more on your inputs, it makes it harder to spend money on technology. And you see that with UPS. I can't get over that price rise in UPS today. Spending a little money on technology gives investors something to hold on to.
All right. Well, I hope you guys all have a great weekend, because that is going to do it for our cross-platform coverage on this Friday afternoon. Join us again at the same time, same place on Monday on YouTube, on Bloomberg TV, and of course on Bloomberg Radio. Have a great weekend, everyone.
You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Masser and Bloomberg Quick Takes Tim Stenovic on Bloomberg Radio.
It's Bloomberg Business Week. Tim Stenovic and Katie Gradfeld live in the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio in New York. Well, there you have it, Katie. The end of a shortened trading weekend is looking like a decline over the last 5 days for the S&P 500. The Dow finishing the day down by close to 0.8%. The S&P 500 lower to a similar tune. The Nasdaq, though, down by more than 0.8%. Let's head now to Washington, D.C. for a check of the latest world and national news. For that, we go to Nancy Lyons. Hey there, Nance.
Hey, Tim. The New York police and other state and federal officials are on alert this weekend as the nation commemorates the 20th anniversary of the 9/11 attacks. During today's security briefing, New York Governor Kathy Hochul admitted this is a vulnerable weekend, but she says they are ready.
You'll see individuals with long arms. You'll see them looking a little bit militarized. But the idea is to let anyone know that you mess with New York, there'll be consequences.
Hochul says New York City and Homeland Security have established a new sense of security for Americans. Today in Washington, where the Pentagon was hit on 9/11, FBI Director Christopher Wray spoke at the Terrorist Screening Center.
Because of September 11th, the FBI transformed itself in ways that have made us better able to carry out our mission to protect the American people and uphold the Constitution.
Wray says the FBI has never stopped working to keep Americans safe. Tomorrow, President Biden and First Lady Jill Biden will visit all 3 sites that came under attack on September 11th. Former Presidents George W. Bush and Barack Obama will also attend commemoration ceremonies. Bush will deliver the keynote remarks at the Flight 93 National Memorial in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. Obama and former First Lady Michelle Obama both attend a remembrance ceremony at Ground Zero in New York City. Prince Andrew has until September 17th to respond to a lawsuit brought by an American woman who alleges she was forced to have sex with him when she was underage. Court documents filed today in the U.S. court say the affidavit was delivered to Andrew's home in late August. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Nancy Lyons.
If knowledge is power, the Bloomberg Terminal is your power up, connecting you to real-time financial data, market-moving news, powerful analytics, and an influential network of financial decision makers around the world. Share ideas, negotiate trades, and gain the insight you need to make more informed decisions. See how the Terminal can take your workflow to the next level at Bloomberg.com/professional.
You know the expression, hit the ground running. We think it's a better idea to hit the ground listening. Karen Moscow.
The pandemic is having a major impact on the labor market.
Nathan Hager.
President Biden is setting a new goal.
Bloomberg Daybreak.
A landmark trial kicked off this week.
Weekday mornings at 5 Eastern.
We really haven't
haven't seen that kind of move happen.
On Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Melissa from Michigan. I work an extra part-time job serving lunch at my child's school, but I still can't afford to put food on our table.
Daniel from California. Choosing whether to pay the rent or pay to fix the car to get to work doesn't leave us with much at all. Now we can't even pay for meals.
Hunger is a story we can end. End it at feedingamerica.org. Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
There are a lot of ways to look at the world right now.
Interesting that you've got an overweight on Hong Kong.
And the more of them you can access, the better.
What has to be his strategy?
Perspective.
Who's doing school best?
Clarity.
How do we get it so that the benefits get to everybody?
Expertise.
He seems to have exactly the right combination. It's character plus policy.
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
I learned patience from my adoptive dad. All he had to say was,
Hey, you got this. Just breathe. Hey, we're pretty good.
yeah.
Might have to start a band.
I got it.
Learn about adopting a teen from foster care. You can't imagine the reward. Visit adoptuskids.org to find out more. This message is brought to you by Adopt US Kids, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, and the Ad Council.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscriptions. When Paul Sweeney and Matt Miller bring you the day's market news.
How do you think investors should view Bitcoin?
You can count on some frivolity.
We've never taken them to Disney, so just failure on so many
What?
different fronts.
Bloomberg Markets. Extensive, essential, and endlessly entertaining.
I'm not a pet person. I'm a financial analyst. By the way, someone writes in and says, I didn't realize Paul hated American values.
Weekday mornings at 10 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com.
Remember the last time your family visited the forest? It's a place of wonder and imagination for the whole family, where stories come to life. And it's closer than you think. Ready to plan your next visit? Make the forest part of your story today at a local park near you, or find one at discovertheforest.org. Brought to you by the United States Forest Service and the Ad Council.
The Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council present the story of Tom and Levi.
Tom is the smartest man I know. He's been a professor at 2 major universities, been a teacher for over 40 years. One day, he told me that he was having problems in his classes. I think one of the students had asked the question and he didn't remember the answer. And I also noticed that he was letting his class out earlier than they were supposed to let out. And he was telling them that he was doing it as a favor to them, but I think in reality, he just wanted to get out of there. I was really starting to worry because I saw something that's wrong.
Levi and I talked about how it would change our lives, but he was there beside me, and my love for him was just immense.
When something feels different, it could be Alzheimer's. Now is the time to talk. Visit alz.org/ourstories to learn more. A message from the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
What's the difference between you and your competition?
What's your vision in this relationship?